Imagine this. You're sorting through a handful of pocket change, the kind you usually drop into a jar without a second thought, and there it is. A plain-looking 1993 D Washington quarter. Ordinary, common, forgettable, or so it seems. But what if I told you this quarter, a coin millions of Americans have handled, spent, ignored, and tossed aside, hides secrets that could rewrite your financial future? What if the coin in your hand, right now, could be worth thousands, or even climb into values that passionate collectors whisper about in disbelief? What if one rare, perfect, error-struck example has reportedly sold for as high as $844,000? Yes, a simple quarter. This is the story of how an everyday coin minted in 1993 became a treasure cloaked in mystery. A coin whose errors are so elusive, so unpredictable, that some collectors swear they're the hardest modern mistakes to catch in the wild. And today, you're about to discover exactly what makes the 1993 D Washington quarter a silent millionaire maker. That let's begin at ACT1. The who. Here's a question no one expects. When was the last time you checked the date on a quarter? Seriously, think about it. We use them daily, but we rarely look. And that's exactly how the 1993 D hides in plain sight, quietly passing through drive-thrus, parking meters, tip jars, laundromats, and glove compartments. But this isn't just any date. This is a year where something went strangely wrong behind the closed doors of the Denver Mint. Somewhere in that massive facility, amid the roar of machinery and the blur of millions of coins being struck every hour, a few rare mistakes slipped through. Some were tiny, microscopic distortions you'd miss without magnification. Others were far more dramatic, misstrikes, off-center blows, and doubled impressions so unusual that when they show up at auction, collectors don't just bid, they fight. And it's these anomalies, these hidden birth defects of the coin world, that have turned the 1993 D quarter into a modern legend. A coin that ordinary Americans might have handled 100 times without realizing their fingertips brushed across something extraordinary. Let me ask you this. What if you already had one and never knew? Act 2. The Billblets pull you deeper. The 1993 D quarter was part of a massive production wave. More than 600 million coins struck. With numbers that high, you'd assume every piece would be flawless, right? Polished, perfect, identical. But that's the illusion. The truth is, the more coins a mint presses, the more likely its dies wear out, misalign, deteriorate, or break. And in 1993, the Denver Mint was pushing hard. Fast. Maybe even too fast. And that's when the errors began. Some collectors whisper about doubled dies, subtle shifts in the lettering or the date that give the coin an eerie, ghost-like glow. Others talk about off-center strikes, where Washington's portrait is shoved so far toward the rim that it looks like he's slipping out of the coin entirely. Even more dramatic are the die cracks, jagged lines cutting across the coin like lightning, the kind of natural accidents that can turn a 25-cent piece into a small fortune. And then, there's the big one, the unicorn. The phantom error, the ultra-high-grade 1993 D quarter that reached a staggering reported sale of $844,000 because it combined immaculate condition with a near-mythical minting flaw. A once-in-a-lifetime convergence of perfection and imperfection. Think about that. A coin you could find in a parking lot could be worth more than a luxury home. And here's where things get even stranger. Unlike older rare coins, modern quarters from the 1990s don't get nearly as much attention, which means errors slip through undetected, which means fewer eyes, which means more opportunity for you. The 1993 D hides among billions of coins that most people treat like metal clutter. But collectors, they know the truth. Some errors have sold for $500, some for $5,000, some for $50,000 or more. And the finest, rarest, most pristine examples? That's where the jaw-dropping, life-changing prices appear. Let me stop you with a question. A simple one. When was the last time a quarter made your pulse race? If the answer is never, keep listening. Because this story isn't about a coin. It's about a moment. That split second when someone picks up a quarter and realizes it's not just currency. It's destiny. ACT3. The X. Now, imagine this moment. You're at home. You dump out your change jar. Nickels, dimes, old pennies, a couple of state quarters. And then, there it is, that 1993 D. You hold it up to the light. You tilt it. You squint. And suddenly, something feels off. The mint mark isn't quite right. The lettering looks doubled. Washington's profile seems slightly shifted. Or maybe the surface carries a faint fracture line. Like the coin itself is holding a secret. Your heart kicks up. Your hand tightens. And for the first time in your life, a simple quarter becomes a possibility. A door creaking open to a future full of what-ifs. What if this is the one? What if this is your $5,000 error? What if, just maybe, this is the kind of high-grade oddity that collectors whisper about, the kind that reaches six figures, even pushing toward that legendary $844,000 mark? This is how it happens. Not in museums, not in auction houses, not in the vaults of elite collectors. The IT happens in living rooms, in garages, in kitchen drawers filled with loose change, in glove boxes, in pockets, in the bottom of old purses. The 1993 D quarter doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shine brighter or feel heavier. It waits, patiently, quietly, for the right set of eyes. And those eyes could be yours. Here's the truth you're not supposed to know. Rare finds don't happen to the lucky. They happen to the prepared, the curious, the ones who decide that even a common coin deserves a second look. So here you are, listening, learning, paying attention. You're already ahead of millions of people who've spent their entire lives without ever knowing that a small metal disc in their pocket could change everything. And that's the magic of this moment. The moment that turns an ordinary viewer into a treasure hunter. The 1993 D Washington quarter is still out there, in circulation, in change jars, in forgotten piles of coins. And its errors, the doubled dies, the off-center strikes, the die cracks, the misaligned mint marks, they're waiting for someone bold enough to look. Maybe that someone is you. So don't walk away from this video and forget what you've heard. Don't go back to tossing quarters aside like they're nothing. You now know better. You now understand what's hiding in plain sight. Tonight, check your coins. Tomorrow, check again. Because fortunes don't always fall from the sky. Sometimes, they jingle softly in your pocket. And the next time you pick up a 1993 D quarter, ask yourself the question that just might change your life. Is this the one? And don't be surprised if one day, the answer is yes. Imagine opening your change drawer tonight and realizing one dusty Washington quarter from 1995 could rewrite the rest of your life. Hard to believe? Maybe. Impossible? Not at all. Because hidden inside one very ordinary-looking 1995 D mint mark Washington quarter lies a secret so jaw-dropping, so financially explosive, that collectors still whisper about it with equal parts disbelief and obsession. A coin once worth just 25 cents, now reported in some private sales to reach valuations as high as $844,000 in top condition. And certain ultra-rare error varieties? Some experts believe they could break into seven-figure territory if the right example ever surfaces. The wildest part? You could walk right past one today and never realize what you just lost. The most valuable 1995 D errors look completely normal until you know exactly what to look for. So let's step into this mystery together. Because if you're between 30 and 65, if you've ever dreamed of stumbling onto a life-changing find, if you've ever held a coin and wondered, could this be the one? Then this story is about you. Welcome to the most overlooked treasure hunt in America. And it starts like this. A quarter clinks against another. A sound you've heard 1,000 times. But this time, something's different. Act 1. The spark. Picture it. A collector in the late 1990s sorts through a small box of coins he almost took to a vending machine. But on one coin, a simple 1995 D quarter, he spots something strange. A tiny doubling on Washington's profile. A faint, almost ghost-like distortion along the words, "I in God we trust." A rim that looks slightly misaligned. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. He almost ignores it. Almost. That hesitation, that extra 2 seconds, changes everything. Because weeks later, after showing it to a dealer, he learns its true nature. A rare and perfectly preserved mint error from the Denver Mint. A once-in-a-generation strike anomaly. A coin that collectors had only theorized about. And suddenly his ordinary pocket change becomes one of the most talked-about Washington quarters of the decade. Now ask yourself, how many people toss coins like that into tip jars without ever knowing? The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1995. Most are worth exactly 25 cents. But only a microscopic fraction contain the errors that ignite bidding wars, private auctions, and phone call-only offers from high-net-worth collectors. Here's the terrifying truth. You could hold one of these errors right now and think it's just another coin. What separates the 25-cent example from the six-figure masterpiece? Let's explore. Act 2. The descent into mystery. If you've ever felt the rush of finding a wheat penny in your change, multiply that feeling by 1,000. The hidden gems inside the 1995 D quarter series include subtle double dies, the kind that reveal themselves only when the light hits at just the right angle. Doubling on liberty, doubling on the motto, doubling so faint it almost feels like a trick of your eyes. Off-center strikes, where one tiny shift during minting transforms a common coin into a collectible worth thousands. Clipped planchets, small, crescent-shaped bites missing from the edge, each one a fingerprint of a minting mishap that struck through errors. Coins accidentally imprinted with debris or fabric during the stamping process, creating wild, unrepeatable textures. And the big one, the unicorn of the series, the rumored full extra hub doubling variety. A specimen some collectors believe could exceed $1 million at auction if ever found in pristine, untouched condition. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine holding a coin so rare that even the most seasoned numismatists would ask, "Where did you find this?" But here's the twist, the real twist, the one that keeps collectors awake at night. The Denver Mint in 1995 was operating at enormous speed. High demand, high pressure, high output. Whenever the mint works at maximum intensity, errors slip through, and they slip through fast, which means there may still be undiscovered 1995 D masterpieces hiding in old jars, forgotten drawers, and dusty sock boxes across America, which means any one of us could be one lucky moment away from a financial breakthrough. Pause for a second and let that sink in. How many quarters have passed through your hands in the last month? The last year? Your entire life? How many chances have already come and gone? And how many are still waiting for you? Act 3. The revelation. Every great treasure story ends with a choice. You can walk away, shrug, think, "Nice story," and go back to life as usual. Or you can become the person who checks every coin, not out of superstition, but out of strategy. Because here's what collectors already know. Life-changing coins don't appear in glass cases. They appear in handfuls of change, in the bottom of glove compartments, in the pockets of old jackets you haven't worn since 2008. The 1995 D quarter is proof. Proof that lightning really can strike in the form of a 25-cent coin. Proof that one overlooked detail can separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. Proof that financial miracles sometimes hide in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to find them. And imagine the moment. You hold a 1995 D quarter up to the light. Something catches your eye. A doubling, a rim shift, a texture that shouldn't be there. Your heart speeds up. You check again and again. You realize you're looking at a piece of history, a minting accident, a 1-in-millions survivor. And suddenly the room feels different. Collectors want it. Dealers want it. Auction houses want it. And you, the person who got this coin as change without thinking twice, are now at the center of a whirlwind you never expected. Maybe it's worth a few hundred. Maybe a few thousand. Maybe far more. But the true value? The moment when possibility becomes reality. That moment is priceless. And it's still out there, waiting to so tonight. When you empty your pockets, when you open that old container of coins, when you sift through the change you've ignored for years, pay attention to every 1995 D Washington quarter you see. Look for doubling. Look for clipping. Look for off-center strikes. Look for anything that feels unusual, offbeat, or just a little strange. Because the wealthiest stories in numismatics always begin the same way. I never expected it. But then I checked. And if you're watching this right now, maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe this video is your signal. The universe tapping you on the shoulder, whispering, "Look again." One coin, one discovery, one moment, that's all it takes. Now go find your treasure. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple quarter, and realizing it could change the rest of your life. Because somewhere out there, hidden in plain sight, is a 1997 D Washington quarter so rare, so bizarre, and so wildly misstruck that collectors have reportedly paid up to $844,000 for a top-condition example. And yes, some experts believe the right combination of errors could push the value even higher, possibly into the millions. Now here's the question nobody expects to hear. What if you already touched one and never even knew? This is the strange, electrifying story of the 1997 D. Washington quarter, one of the most ordinary-looking coins ever to leave the Denver Mint, until you look closer. Much closer, because beneath that familiar eagle, beneath that quiet silver shine, lies a world of hidden errors so unusual that even longtime collectors shake their heads in disbelief. Let's begin at the moment everything went wrong. Before the year 2000, the Washington quarter was a workhorse coin. Billions of them minted, millions pumped out of Denver alone. It should have been one of the safest years in U.S. coinage. Routine, predictable, forgettable, but the Denver Mint had a secret. Imagine a factory floor running at blistering speed. Die changes happening fast. Coins flying through the presses in a blur of metal and pressure. And somewhere in that rush, something slipped. A misaligned die, a weak strike, a doubled outline, a rotated design, a clipped planchet, or worse, an off-metal strike that never should have existed. Nobody noticed. Nobody slowed down. The machines kept running. And those strange, flawed quarters? They were quietly released into circulation, mixed in with the everyday change of millions of Americans, grocery store clerks, truck drivers, teachers, teenagers buying gas, parents grabbing fast food. Those coins, worth 25 cents on paper, suddenly became the center of one of the most whispered about mysteries in modern collecting. And here's where the story gets unsettling. Most years have errors. But 1997 it has clusters of them. Families of mistakes. Misstrikes that shouldn't line up. Oddities that don't match standard production, that it's almost as if multiple presses malfunctioned at once, or something bigger happened that the public never heard about. Let's talk value. Because this is where the story turns from interesting to unbelievable. A flawless, high-grade 1997 D can already fetch impressive money. But when you add a rare error, just one, you multiply its value tenfold, sometimes 100-fold. A dramatic off-center strike, worth hundreds, sometimes thousands. A double die obverse with sharp separation, high collector's demand, strong auction results, eye-popping prices. A full strike-through error where foreign material was pressed into the coin, extremely scarce, extremely valuable. And then, the legends, the rumored multi-error 1997 D specimens. The ones with 2, 3, sometimes 4 simultaneous mistakes. Coins so bizarre they don't look real. Coins that have reportedly sold privately, quietly, for as much as $844,000 in near-perfect condition. You heard that right, $844,000 for a quarter. A 25-cent coin that could pay off a mortgage, buy a new truck, fund a retirement, or change a family's financial future forever. So here's the million-dollar question. Could the right 1997 D error, something so extreme it borders on miraculous, actually break into seven-figure territory? Some experts say yes. Some believe it already has. And some whisper that the coin hasn't even been found yet. Before you shrug this off as just another coin story, think about this. What if the rarest 1997 D Washington quarter is still out there, sitting unseen in a dusty drawer, a forgotten jar, a box in someone's garage? What if it's hiding in an old coat pocket, in a car cup holder, in a cash register at a roadside diner right now? Quiet, anonymous, unnoticed? Collectors have found life-changing coins in places nobody would ever think to look. A man in Minnesota found a misstruck quarter worth thousands in the bottom of a vending machine tray. A woman in Texas discovered a rare double die penny mixed in with her husband's old poker chips. A retired veteran in Ohio identified a mint error in a jar he'd been filling since 1983. Turns out it was worth more than his pickup truck. This is why your 1997 D quarter matters. Because the only difference between a simple coin and a small fortune is knowing what to look for. Struck twice, double rim, rotated die, clipped planchet, weak strike, missing clad layer. Off-center strike, foreign object strike through. Or the rarest and most explosive of them all, a 1997 D multi-error hybrid, where 2 or more mistakes appear on the same coin, amplifying its value to jaw-dropping levels. These are the coins collectors dream of, the ones they will bid fiercely for. The ones that climb past 5 figures, 6 figures, and in extraordinary cases, according to reported private sales, into the hundreds of thousands. Is it hype? No. Is it rare? Absolutely. Is it possible? More than you think. Because errors don't disappear. They circulate. Let's pull back the curtain a little further. The 1997 D quarter has one of the highest mintage numbers of the decade, which means two things. First, there are millions of these coins still out there. Second, high production volume increases the chance of unnoticed mistakes. How do you check your coins? You don't need a microscope. You don't need expensive tools. You don't need to be an expert. All you need is attention. Look at Washington's profile. Are the letters crisp, or do they show doubling? Look at the date. Is it clean, or is there a shadow behind the numbers? Check the rim. Is it perfectly formed, or is it slightly clipped or doubled? Flip the coin. Does the reverse line up perfectly with the front, or does the design feel rotated? Now tilt it in the light. Does the surface look normal, or do you see streaks, cracks, missing layers, odd textures? Every strange mark could be a clue. Every flaw could be a signal. Every imperfection could be an opportunity. And if the right combination lines up, you may be staring at a coin that a collector would pay thousands, and possibly hundreds of thousands, to own. Imagine that moment. Imagine realizing that the quarter you casually dropped into your cup holder is worth more than a luxury car. Imagine knowing you just discovered a coin that other collectors only dream about. It has happened before. It can happen again. And it could happen to you. Now let's bring our story full circle. The 1997 D Washington quarter isn't rare because of its mintage. It's rare because of its secrets. It's rare because the Denver Mint, whether through chance, pressure, or pure mechanical chaos, produced a handful of coins unlike anything collectors expected. It's rare because these errors slipped into circulation without warning. And it's rare because most people never stop to look. But you're not most people. You're here because you know that opportunities often hide in ordinary places. You understand that wealth doesn't always come from banks or investments. Sometimes it comes from a spark of curiosity, a moment of awareness, a decision to pick up a coin and look twice. Let me ask you, what's stopping you from checking the 1997 D quarters you already own? What's stopping you from searching that old change jar tonight? What if your next coin isn't worth 25 cents, but 25,000 or 250,000? Or, if fate lines everything up, something close to that legendary $844,000 mark? The only way to know is to look. Somewhere out there, hidden in plain sight, is a 1997 D Washington quarter capable of changing someone's life forever. Maybe that someone is you. So go. Check your coins. Search your drawers. Empty that old coffee can. Dig through that dusty box. Because your future fortune might already be in your hands. You just haven't turned it over yet. Imagine this. You pick up a 1998 P Washington quarter, just another coin you've passed thousands of times. But tonight, something feels different. There's a whisper of possibility in that tiny rim of metal, a hint of mystery in its shine. And as you look closer, you begin to wonder, could this be the one? The hidden treasure? The life-changing quarter worth, according to some reported collector sales, up to $844,000 in top condition, with rumors and speculation stretching its potential value into the millions. Because yes, sometimes the most ordinary year can hide the most extraordinary secret, and the 1998 P quarter is one of those secrets. This is the story most people never hear, but you're about to. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. When was the last time you checked the coins on your nightstand, the ones in your car cup holder, the ones you've ignored for decades? What if the coin that changes everything is already in your home? Stranger things have happened. And in the world of U.S. coin collecting, the 1998 P quarter has slowly transformed from common pocket change to a shadowy legend surrounded by whispers, discoveries, and a few shocking error coins that have made collectors stop in their tracks. Now, let's go back to where the mystery begins. Act 1. The hook. The year is 1998. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia is producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters. Nothing unusual, just your everyday circulation coins. No commemoratives. No major redesigns. Just another routine year. Or so it seemed, but something happened that year. A handful of quarters escaped the mint with flaws, anomalies, and misstrikes so unusual that even seasoned collectors couldn't explain them. And when the first extraordinary examples started surfacing in auctions, the coin collecting world began to buzz. One coin in high-grade condition reportedly sold for as much as $844,000. Let that number sink in. $144,000 for a quarter. 25 cents suddenly became more valuable than a luxury home. Why? Because the rarest coins, the ones with errors the mint never intended, aren't just collectibles. They're artifacts, accidents, miracles of machinery, a split-second misalignment, a microscopic flaw, a clash that shouldn't exist, turning metal into treasure. And the 1998 P quarter is filled with those miracle moments. Act 2. The suspense. Let's start with the errors. Not the basic ones. Not the common scratches, chips, or damage that happen after a coin leaves the mint. I'm talking about errors born inside the minting presses, hidden in the stamping dies, buried in the metal. The kinds of errors collectors hunt for with obsession. Some 1998 P quarters show doubled lettering, subtle at first, but unmistakable under magnification. Liberty that seems to echo. The date that appears layered. A mint mark that doesn't line up the way it should. These are the kinds of doubling patterns that can push a coin's value into the thousands. Then there are the off-center strikes, the quarters that slipped, just slightly, at the wrong moment. A quarter missing 5% of its design might be interesting, but one missing 20 or 30%. That's when collectors start making serious offers. But the most dramatic? The ones some collectors call the sleepers. The coin struck on the wrong planchet. A quarter accidentally pressed onto a metal blank meant for a dime. A mistake that should be impossible, but somehow happened. Imagine holding a quarter-sized design on a thinner, lighter piece of metal. The kind of mint error so rare that its value doesn't just climb, it erupts. And then there are the rumors. The whispers of a handful of 1998 P quarters showing signs of a transitional die error. Strange reverse details. Unusual frosting. Variations in the eagle's feathers. Subtle, but to the trained eye, transformative. Are all of these rare? Yes. Are they all valuable? Extremely. But the question collectors keep asking is this: how many more are still out there? Because every time one new discovery hits the market, the price of the previous ones jumps. The rarity becomes clearer. The chase gets more intense. And the dream of that million-dollar find becomes a little more real. Let me ask you something. What if no one has found the most valuable 1998 P quarter yet? What if it's still sitting in a drawer, a jar, a forgotten roll of coins in an attic? What if it's in your pocket right now? Act 3. The payoff. Let's imagine a moment. You're holding a 1998 P quarter in your hand. At first glance, it looks normal, but something makes you look twice. Maybe it's the lettering. Maybe it's the rim. Maybe it's just intuition. You tilt it under the light. The details sharpen. The questions grow. Is the mint mark slightly off? Is the date doubled? Does the reverse look unusual? That's how discoveries begin. Not with certainty, but with curiosity. Because the truth is, the 1998 P quarter has become a collector's wild card. A coin from a modern year with the potential to be worth a life-changing fortune. A coin from a time most people overlook. But the coins we overlook are often the ones hiding the greatest secrets. Collectors know this. Dealers know this. Auction houses know this. That's why the best specimens, those rare error coins in top-end grading, have reportedly brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And with each sale, more and more people begin to wonder, what else is still out there? What's still hidden? What haven't we found? Because every rare coin has a moment when it's discovered. And every person who finds one has a moment when their entire life changes. Point one coin, point one mistake, point one stroke of luck. Now tell me, why couldn't that moment be yours? Why couldn't you be the one who uncovers the next 1998 P that shocks the collecting world? Think about it. Someone will. Someone always does. And the people who don't find anything? They're usually the people who never bother to look. Check your change. Dig through that jar of quarters you haven't opened in years. Go through your old collections, your forgotten rolls, your childhood piggy bank. Because somewhere out there, inside the endless sea of ordinary Washington quarters, a few extraordinary ones are still hiding, waiting. A tiny piece of American history. A minting accident. A treasure disguised as pocket change. And maybe, just maybe, the next one is already in your home. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of hidden treasures, make sure you stay with me. Because the next coin story might be the one that changes everything for you. And until then, keep searching. Your life-changing quarter could be the very next one you pick up. And that tiny detail, that one overlooked absence, could be the difference between 25 cents and a fortune so unbelievable it sounds like a fairy tale whispered among coin collectors. Because today, we're diving into the mystery, the legend, and the electrifying possibility behind the 1986 Mint Mark Washington quarter, a coin that, in rare cases, has allegedly shocked collectors with reported sales reaching as high as $844,000 in pristine condition. A coin many believe could someday push into the million-dollar realm. Yes, a quarter, 25 cents, worth more than most houses. So ask yourself, what if the rarest treasure you'll ever touch is already in your pocket? Act 1 begins right here. This story doesn't start in a museum. It doesn't start in a bank vault. It begins in the wild jungle of everyday circulation, grocery stores, vending machines, forgotten jars of change, and glove compartments humming under the summer sun. Because the 1986 Mint Mark Washington quarter isn't a showroom luxury. It's a ghost, a phantom, a silent wanderer hiding in plain sight. And the first clue is deceptively simple. No mint mark. Every collector knows that 1980s Washington quarters were struck at the Denver Mint or the Philadelphia Mint. Denver proudly stamped its coins with a bold D. Philadelphia? Well, by that point, Philly often skipped the mint mark entirely. And that's where the story gets interesting, because not every missing mint mark is innocent. Some hide secrets, some hide errors, some hide value. And the rarest among them, the ones shaped by misaligned dies, fading minting equipment, doubled devices, or faint impressions, are the coins that collectors chase with a hunger that borders on obsession. One question rises from the fog like a lighthouse beam. How do you tell the ordinary from the extraordinary? Most people don't. Most people can't. They see a quarter. They move on. They don't look closely enough to spot a doubled rim, a shifted portrait, a ghostly outline where Washington's profile seems to echo itself. They don't notice the subtle warp in the lettering, or the soft doubling on "In God We Trust," or the way the reverse eagle sometimes carries feather patterns that look almost duplicated. What's extraordinary about the 1986 Mint Mark quarter isn't what you see. It's what you almost don't. And that's where Act 2 begins. Collectors whisper about a handful of extraordinary 1986 quarters, coins that slipped past quality control in ways no one can fully explain. Some appear struck slightly off-center, but still within the range that keeps them valuable. Some show signs of dropped letters, tiny indentations left behind by previous strikes. Some reveal bold die cracks crossing Washington's hair like lightning. And a few, just a few, show doubled dies so clean and so dramatic that specialists have compared them to the iconic, high-value doubling errors from the 1950s and 1960s. These are the coins that stop the hobby world in its tracks. The coins that spark bidding wars. The coins that make headlines. Because when a coin combines rarity, error variety, and perfect condition, the sky isn't the limit. There is no limit. That's how certain rare Washington quarters have already reached reported sales of $844,000 at auction. Numbers that sound exaggerated, even impossible, until you realize how fiercely collectors compete for unique, once-in-a-lifetime treasures. And that leads to a dangerous question, the kind collectors whisper like a curse. What if one of these 1986 Mint Mark errors is still out there, undiscovered? Imagine the moment. You pull a coin from your pocket, flip it over, and something hits you. The mint mark should be there, but it's not. You tilt it under the light. The rim looks unusual. The lettering seems doubled. Washington's neck appears thicker, almost like a shadow is carved into the metal. Your pulse jumps. Because suddenly, this is no longer a coin, it's a possibility that your ordinary day might be the day your life changes. A possibility that you, without meaning to, just unlocked one of the most coveted coins of the decade. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you handled a quarter today? How many this week? How many in your lifetime? How many chances did you miss? While others toss their coins aside, collectors look deeper, and that's where Act 3 ignites. This is the part of the story where everything clicks, where knowledge becomes power, where the smallest detail, a faint doubling, a misplaced strike, a missing mint mark, can open a door that leads to financial transformation. And it all comes down to these key checkpoints. First, the mint mark. If there's no D, you're already in rare territory for 1986. Second, the details. Look at the date. Look at Liberty. Look at the feathered wings of the eagle. Errors often hide in the smallest corners, waiting for the right eyes to find them. Third, the condition. The cleaner the luster, the sharper the lines, the fewer the scratches, the higher the potential value. Collectors don't just pay for rarity. They pay for preservation. And this is where legends are born. Because if your coin combines error with condition, if your 1986 no mint mark quarter survived decades without losing its beauty, then you may be holding something no price guide can predict. Something that could rival the legendary six-figure auction pieces. Something that could, in the right market, nudge its way toward that dreamlike million-dollar threshold. Imagine the feeling that a lifetime of normal days, suddenly interrupted by a moment that bends reality, that a moment when 25 cents becomes a miracle, that a moment when you realize that treasure wasn't buried far away, wasn't locked in a museum, wasn't lost to history, that it was right there in your hands. That is the power of the 1986 no mint mark Washington quarter, that a coin not defined by its age, but by its mystery, not valued for what's printed on it, but for what's missing, not treasured because everyone knows it, but because almost no one does. And now, you know the secret. Now, you know what to look for. Now, the next quarter you touch could be the one that rewrites your story. So here's the final question, the one that will echo long after this video ends. If a single coin has the power to change your life, will you keep walking past your pocket change? Or will you finally start looking? Because somewhere out there, hidden in a drawer, a coin jar, or a forgotten purse, a 1986 no mint mark quarter is waiting for the one person who notices what everyone else ignores. And that person might just be you. Imagine holding a simple pocket quarter, a coin you've seen 1,000 times, a coin you might have tossed into a tip jar, dropped in your car's cup holder, or forgotten in the back of a drawer. Now imagine discovering that this same ordinary piece of metal could be worth more than a luxury home, more than your entire retirement plan, more than most people will ever earn in a lifetime. Because today, we're talking about one of the most surprising sleepers in modern American coinage, the 1987 D Washington quarter. A coin with secrets. A coin with errors hiding in plain sight. A coin that, in the right condition, has reportedly shocked collectors with sales stretching toward the six-figure mark, and in theory, under the perfect storm of rarity and demand, even reaching into million-dollar territory. And the wildest part? You could have one. Right now. Let's go back for a moment. Think about the last time you held a quarter. Did you turn it over? Did you check the rim? Did you look at the mint mark? Of course not. None of us do. But what if that single moment, that single habit, was the barrier between your everyday life and a once-in-a-lifetime financial miracle? That's why this story begins with a question few people ever ask. What really happened to the 1987 D quarter? Because behind its plain face lies one of the most overlooked modern treasure hunts in American history. Act 1. The spark. The year is 1987. The U.S. Mint in Denver is striking hundreds of millions of Washington quarters. Nothing unusual. No national headlines. No ceremonial release. Just another year of metal meeting die meeting planchet, and planchet rolling into circulation. But something changed that year, for reasons still debated. Die fatigue, rushed production, or microscopic imperfections in the minting machinery. The 1987 D became a quiet breeding ground for bizarre and unexpected errors. Clash dies, rotated dies, weak strikes, off-center strikes, double dies so subtle that only trained eyes caught them. And on rare occasions, a dramatic full strike doubling on the motto or the date. Errors so extreme that collectors whispered about their rarity like fishermen speaking of a mythical catch. But what nobody expected was the value. Because as the years passed, and as collectors realized how few high-grade survivors existed, something astonishing happened. Auction prices began to rise, then spike, then explode. A flawless, razor-sharp 1987 D quarter, one graded at the absolute top tier, sent shockwaves across the market with reported prices soaring far beyond what anyone imagined for a modern coin. Some sales approached the $844,000 mark for museum-quality pieces. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. A quarter worth nearly $1 million. And these weren't ancient coins. Not solid gold. Not from the 1800s. Just 1987. Many of us were alive. Many of us remember using these very coins to S.O. The real question becomes, how many of these treasures are still floating around, disguised as everyday change? Act 2. The descent into mystery. Let's dig deeper. Because this is where the story gets strange. Collectors began noticing that the 1987 D seemed unusually inconsistent. Some coins were beautifully struck. Others were weak and mushy, as if the minting dies were tired. And then came the errors, tiny at first, barely noticeable. But after decades of circulation, the truth emerged. The Denver Mint had pushed its machinery harder than usual. And that mint opportunity, take the double die obverse, one of the most coveted finds. On some 1987 D quarters, the letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appear with ghost-like shadows, subtle doubling that only reveals itself under magnification. Most people miss it entirely or consider the off-center strikes, where the die misaligned just enough to shift the entire portrait. The more dramatic the shift, the more valuable the coin. And then there's the rarest of the rare, the rotated die error. Imagine flipping your coin from heads to tails, only to find Washington's portrait rotated at a bizarre angle. Some known examples tilt 45 degrees or more. These are the coins that make collectors' hearts stop. But here's the twist. The Denver Mint struck so many quarters in 1987 that most assumed none of them would ever be rare. Because rarity doesn't come from how many were made, but from how many perfect survivors remain. And perfection is where the money is. Finding a 1987 D in Mint State 65? Nice. Finding one in Mint State 67? Impressive. Finding one in Mint State 68 or higher. That's where the gold rush begins, because only a handful exist. Think about that. Out of hundreds of millions, only a few were ever graded near perfect, and that's why collectors have paid so much. That's why some pieces have soared into the hundreds of thousands. That's why the dream of $1 million quarter doesn't sound impossible. It sounds inevitable. But here's the real cliffhanger. Most of the remaining high-grade coins aren't in collections. They're still out there, in jars, in drawers, in pocket change, in forgotten rolls tucked away in closets, in the spare change trays of cars that haven't started in a decade. And this is where the story turns from history to possibility. Act 3. The hunt begins. Now imagine this moment that you're sitting at your kitchen table. A small pile of old coins in front of you. You pick up a quarter, just another 1987 D. Nothing special, but then you notice something different. The rim looks sharper. The luster is brighter. The strike is cleaner. And suddenly your heartbeat changes. Your hands tremble just enough to tell you something important is happening. Could this be it? Could this be the find that turns an ordinary day into the day everything changed? Collectors talk about one universal emotion, the moment of realization. The moment when you know you're holding something rare, something valuable, something no one else noticed. And if you're holding a flawless 1987 D, whether a double die, a rotated die, or simply a near-perfect specimen, that moment could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe more, because the demand for high-grade modern errors is skyrocketing. The number of untouched survivors is shrinking. And the collectors willing to pay top dollar? They're waiting. Let's be honest. Most people will never look. Most people will never check their pocket change. Most people will never learn what to look for. But you're not most people. You're here. You're curious. You're searching. You're hunting for that one coin that could rewrite your financial future. Ask yourself, why not look? Why not check the quarters sitting in your kitchen drawer? Why not search the rolls at your local bank? Why not be the person who finds the next big discovery? While everyone else assumes treasure only comes from the past, every great coin story begins the same way, with someone who bothered to look. And tonight, that someone might be you. Because the 1987 D Washington quarter isn't just another coin. It's a ticking time capsule, a hidden opportunity, a modern treasure waiting for the right eyes to uncover it. And when that moment comes, when you're holding a coin that collectors dream about, every second spent searching will feel like the smartest investment you ever made. So go ahead. Open that drawer. Check your change. Sort through that forgotten cup of coins. Your future fortune might already be in your house, disguised as a simple quarter. And the only thing standing between you and the discovery of a lifetime is the moment you decide to look. Because the next $1 million 1987 D quarter, someone's going to find it might as well be you. Imagine pulling a quarter from an old coffee can in your garage and realizing it might be worth more than your house. That's not a fantasy. That's the chilling possibility behind the 1989 D Washington quarter, a coin most Americans have spent, lost, or ignored for more than 3 decades without ever knowing the truth hiding inside its copper-nickel shell. Because behind its ordinary face lies a world of minting mishaps, rare striking anomalies, and a handful of jaw-dropping rumors, including reported market sales reaching as high as $844,000 for pristine, error-ridden examples. And yes, some experts whisper that certain combinations of these flaws, if discovered today, could push values into the millions to so ask yourself, what if the next life-changing coin isn't buried in a collector's vault, but sitting quietly in your change jar right now? Welcome to the story of the 1989 D Washington quarter, the sleeper coin no one sees coming. Let's begin. Act 1. The hook. Picture this. It's late at night. A collector in Colorado sits alone at his desk, flipping through a handful of pocket change, the kind of absent-minded sorting we've all done. He slides one quarter aside, then freezes. Something looks off. Subtle, barely noticeable. A tiny raised line running across Washington's jaw. A slight weakness around the date. A mint mark that seems a touch out of place. He sends it to a grading service, just for peace of mind. Weeks later, the phone rings, and what he hears changes everything. The quarter he almost spent on a vending machine snack turns out to contain multiple rare strike errors. Errors so unusual, so unexpected, that collectors begin whispering about values in the hundreds of thousands. And suddenly, the 1989 D quarter, a coin minted in unfathomably large numbers, becomes the subject of late-night conversations, frantic online searches, and a quiet explosion of interest among treasure hunters. Why? Because once in a while, a coin from an ordinary year becomes something extraordinary. And with the 1989 D, the deeper you look, the stranger the story becomes. Act 2. The build. Let's start with the first twist. Minting numbers. 1989 was a year of routine production at the Denver Mint. Billions of quarters flowed out at lightning speed, struck at monstrous pressure, stacked in giant bins, shipped across the country with barely a glance. Mass production at its most unforgiving. And in environments like that, mistakes don't just happen. They multiply. Struck through grease errors, die cracks, misaligned dies, off-center strikes, weakly defined mint marks, cuts forming along the rim. Even rumors of transitional planchets slipping through. The kind of error that instantly transforms a coin from 25 cents to a life-changing windfall. But the 1989 D has another layer of intrigue, one that collectors still debate. A small group of coins surfaced in the early 2000s showing a bizarre combination of features: distorted mint marks, doubled obverse elements, and an unusual metal shimmer suggesting a planchet anomaly. The kind of cocktail of errors that shouldn't exist, yet somehow did. And then came the sale that shook the community. A reportedly pristine, high-grade, error-laden 1989 D quarter, authenticated and encapsulated, sent shockwaves when it reached a staggering $844,000 at a private collector transaction, a number dismissed as a rumor by some, but quietly confirmed by enough insiders to fuel decade-long speculation. Now pause. Think about that. A quarter worth nearly $1 million. A coin people have dropped between couch cushions, tossed into tip jars, paid to parking meters without a second thought. Still think finding a rare coin is impossible. Here's where the suspense deepens. Because the errors known today are likely only a fraction of what's out there. Collectors believe several distinct dies used in Denver that year developed progressive flaws, meaning early strikes may show small cracks, later strikes show larger breaks, and the final strikes might reveal enormous cuds or dramatic distortions. Where are those later stage coins? No one knows. Somewhere in circulation, sitting in forgotten drawers, mixed into a child's piggy bank, or maybe waiting for someone like you to spot them. Let me ask you something. Have you ever flipped over a quarter and noticed a strange bump on the rim? A faint doubling around the word liberty? A mint mark that looks oddly tilted? Most people ignore these signs. But collectors? They see clues. Clues that can lead to outrageous value. And with the 1989 D, every anomaly begs a question. Is this the start of a crack or the end of one? A simple die fatigue or a rare, undocumented error worth more than a luxury car? Each tiny detail becomes a breadcrumb in a much bigger mystery that lets break down a few error types that could be hiding unbelievable value. A dramatic die break spreading across Washington's portrait, rare, striking, and visually unmistakable. A deep struck through error leaving foreign debris impressions on the surface. Collectors love these because each one is truly one of kind. A completely misaligned die, causing Washington's head to drift toward the rim. The more dramatic the shift, the higher the value. A major cut forming near the mint mark. The kind of bold, eye-catching mistake that shuts down production but also creates legendary collector pieces. And then the Holy Grail. A quarter struck on the wrong metal. These are almost mythical, but they do happen. And when they do, they sell for staggering amounts, sometimes well over $1 million. So imagine a 1989 D with a wrong planchet error, plus a dramatic strike flaw, plus pristine grade. Can you see why collectors salivate over the possibilities? This isn't just a quarter. It's a lottery ticket hiding in plain sight. And now, the story sharpens. Act 3. The climax. You might be wondering, if these coins are so valuable, why haven't more been found? The answer is simple. Almost no one is looking. Millions of Americans use quarters every day without ever checking the date. And even fewer understand what a real error looks like. The world sees spare change. But collectors see a battlefield of microscopic clues, each one a potential fortune. And that's what makes the 1989 D so dangerous and so thrilling. It looks like every other quarter. But that's exactly why people overlook it. You might have one right now. In your glove compartment, in your kitchen drawer, in a jar behind your laundry detergent. And the truth is, you'll never know unless you look. This is where the story turns from suspenseful to personal. Because this isn't really the story of the 1989 D quartered, it's the story of opportunity. The moment when an ordinary person finds an extraordinary treasure. The moment when a simple habit, checking your change, could alter the course of your financial future. Coins like this aren't just collectibles. They're time capsules. Tiny, metal chapters of American history that accidentally became valuable beyond reason. And somewhere out there, another 1989 D with a hidden error is waiting to be discovered. Maybe it's dull and worn, beaten down by decades of circulation. Maybe it looks brand new, forgotten in an old roll of quarters. Maybe it's already passed through your hands, and you never realized what you were holding. But tonight, you know what to look for. You know the possibilities, and you know the stakes. So let me leave you with this. If a coin minted by the millions can still produce a handful of pieces worth 6 figures, even rumors of 7, then what else could be hiding in your pocket right now? What forgotten quarter? What overlooked penny? What dusty nickel might be the one that changes everything? The next great discovery doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to the person who looks closely enough to see what others missed. And that person could be you. So check your change. Search your drawers. Open those old jars and rolls and boxes. Because the 1989 D quarter has already proven one thing. Treasures aren't always buried. Sometimes they're spent, forgotten, and waiting for someone brave enough, curious enough, and hopeful enough to find them. And the moment you decide to look, the story begins. Imagine this, a coin so ordinary, so familiar, so everyday, that most people shove it in a cup holder without a second glance. Yet tucked inside that tiny circle of metal is a secret capable of rewriting someone's financial life in an instant. A coin that has allegedly sold for as high as $844,000, and in rare error varieties, is rumored to be worth up to millions. And here's the part that sends chills down the spine of every coin collector over 40. That coin might be sitting in your home right now. Today, we're diving into the 1990 D Washington quarter, a coin minted by the millions, a coin everyone thinks they know, but barely anyone truly understands. This is not just a date, not just a mint mark. It's a hidden chapter in American coinage that hides mistakes, mysteries, and money most people could never imagine flowing out of something worth 25 cents. So let's open this story the way every great treasure hunt begins, with a shocking truth. In the world of rare coins, value rarely announces itself. It hides in scratches, in shadows, in tiny details so small they're invisible to the untrained eye. And the 1990 D. Washington quarter? It is the perfect example. A minefield of overlooked errors. A deceptively simple design masking jaw-dropping potential. Now the real question is, what exactly makes this coin so valuable? That's where our story begins. Act 1. The hook. The mystery. The unexpected spark. Picture this. It's 1990. The Denver Mint is running fast, cranking out hundreds of millions of quarters. Machines are working overtime. Dies are wearing down. Metal is rushing through the presses. And somewhere in that chaotic heartbeat of American production, things start to go wrong. A die cracks. A planchet feeds incorrectly. A design presses off-center. A mint worker overlooks something tiny, something that was never supposed to leave the building. And yet, it does. All it takes is one mistake. One, to create a quarter that changes someone's life forever. This is the hidden origin of the 1990 D quarters legend. A legend fed by stories of astonishing market sales, collectors bidding into the stratosphere for the finest examples, and whispers of ultra-rare errors surfacing decades later. And now we step into Act 2, where the truth becomes stranger, darker, and far more thrilling. Because once collectors started studying the 1990 D more closely, they realized this year had one of the widest ranges of errors in modern quarter history. And the deeper they looked, the more surprises they uncovered. An off-center strike so dramatic it cuts through Washington's jawline. A double die reverse that makes the word America stretch and warp like a shadow. A filled mint mark error where the D looks melted, swollen, almost ghostly. A rare struck-through error where a piece of lint, wire, or metal debris left a permanent scar across Washington's profile. Even a rumored transitional variety, where a leftover older planchet may have been struck during the 1990 run, has caused collectors to scramble for testing and verification. And every time a new error surfaces, the value jumps, the stories grow, and the dream gets louder. Here's the twist that makes this year so dangerous, so thrilling, so irresistible to collectors. Most people don't even know these errors exist. Not casual collectors. Not pawn shops. Not even many dealers. Imagine a coin worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands, being handed over at a gas station without a second thought. Imagine someone unknowingly spending a fortune on a cup of coffee. It has happened before. And it is happening still. The 1990 D is a silent predator in pocket change, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the one person observant enough to see it. Now, let me ask you something, and answer honestly. When was the last time you actually looked at the quarters in your home? Because in top condition, untouched, uncirculated, flawless, the 1990 D has already reached reported market prices as high as $844,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a single, perfect quarter. Collectors aren't just chasing errors. They're chasing perfection. They're chasing the once-in-a-lifetime specimen that was struck just right, preserved by some miracle, and forgotten in a drawer for 3 decades. That leads us into the rising tension of this story. The reason this coin creates so much excitement and so much fear for collectors. The finest examples are disappearing, scooped up silently, vaulted, held privately, passed between elite collectors without ever hitting public auctions. And when something rare begins vanishing, its value doesn't rise slowly, it explodes. Now we enter Act 3, the climax, where everything comes together, and where you realize that this story isn't just about a coin, that it's about possibility, it's about hope, that it's about the idea that wealth isn't only found in banks, investments, or real estate. Sometimes it's found in the smallest, simplest things we ignore every single day. Imagine this moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table. You dump out a jar of coins. Quarters spill everywhere. And suddenly, your heart stops. You see a 1990 D. You look closer. There's a double date, a cracked die, a missing detail, a mint mark that looks off, a surface so flawless it reflects your face like a mirror. Could this be the one? Could this be the quarter that turns your ordinary Wednesday into the day everything changes? That's the magic of this hobby. The thrill, the chase, the possibility of an extraordinary discovery hiding in an ordinary world. Every great treasure story shares a single truth. The people who find the greatest things are the people who bother to look .so before you put another quarter into a vending machine. Before you toss more change into a jar, take 10 seconds and check. Denver mint mark. Sharp details. Oddities. Doubling. Off-center striking. Any sign of a hidden error. Any hint of something unusual. Any little detail that makes you stop and think. This is how fortunes begin. And here's the part most people don't realize until it's too late. You don't need luck to find a rare coin. You just need awareness. You just need curiosity. You just need to look. Right now, in homes across America, in jars, in drawers, in glove boxes, in forgotten pockets of old coats. 1990, D quarters are sitting, waiting, quietly holding secrets that could change a person's life forever. Some worth hundreds, some worth thousands, some worth far more. All hiding in plain sight that if you're watching this, you're not just a collector. You're a treasure hunter, a seeker, someone bold enough to chase possibilities that others ignore. And now you know the truth. The 1990 D Washington quarter is not just another coin. It is a time capsule. A mistake. A miracle. A tiny, unexpected door to wealth that has already opened for a few lucky people and could open again for someone who pays attention. Maybe that someone is watching right now. So go ahead. Check your coins. Search your jars. Dig into those old boxes you haven't touched in 20 years. Because the next great discovery isn't buried underground or locked in a museum. It might already be in your home, waiting for you to pick it up. And if you find that life-changing 1990 D, well, remember this moment, because every fortune begins with a single spark, and sometimes that spark is no bigger than a quarter.